Climate change lie number 2 exposed. CO2 causes dangerous global warming. The claim is that carbon dioxide causes dangerous global warming. As we saw in the first video of this series, the assumption that global warming is bad or dangerous is clearly wrong. If you haven't watched that video, I recommend you see it before continuing with this one. It helps to establish the context upon which this video is based. But even with all the benefits of global warming firmly established, is it true that CO2 is the major driver of global warming? As we will see in this video, the counterclaim appears to be far more accurate, that CO2 is not a major driver of beneficial global warming. Al Gore implied a false causation in his infamous Inconvenient film.
The relationship is actually very complicated, but there is one relationship that is far more powerful than all the others, and it is this. When there is more carbon dioxide, the temperature gets warmer because it traps more heat from the sun inside.
He showed a correlation between temperature and CO2, but forgot to mention that all those ups and downs of CO2 came long before heavy industry and automobiles. There were no coal-fired power stations 600,000 years ago. Scientists have since discovered that the CO2 changes were the effect of temperature changes, not the cause. Warming came first, then the CO2 levels increased. The delay was as much as 800 years. Warmer temperatures drove excess CO2 out of the oceans. Temperature was in control, not the other way around. Whoops. Corollary claim. But CO2 has been proven to be a greenhouse gas. Scientists in laboratories have shown conclusively that carbon dioxide absorbs and re-emits infrared radiation, making it an effective greenhouse gas. Discussion. Agreed, but yes, CO2 is a greenhouse gas, but water vapor is by far the primary greenhouse gas on this planet. By some estimates, as much as 60% of the global average greenhouse effect. The real question needs to be, how effective is CO2 in driving up the temperature of our world? And if not CO2, then what is controlling the temperature? Fact. Late 20th century warming slowed with more CO2. As we saw in the last video, the late 20th century rate of warming, 1970 to 2000, was slightly less than that of the early 20th century rate of warming, 1910 to 1940. More than that, the massive CO2 production during and after World War II could not keep the world from cooling in the period from 1940 to 1970, and it could not budge the late 20th century rate of warming to be any faster than the earlier warming that century. This shows that CO2 is a weak greenhouse gas, the opposite of what warming alarmists are claiming. Whoops. Again. Discussion. CO2 is a weak greenhouse gas. At the tiny concentrations of CO2 currently held in our atmosphere, carbon dioxide is overwhelmed by the cooling effects of water. What are these cooling effects? First, water, when it is warmed by the sun, evaporates. You've likely heard of evaporative coolers. If you haven't, then try this. If your hand is clean, lick the back of your hand and blow on it. Or take out a cotton ball dampened with rubbing alcohol and rub it on your skin and then blow on it. The evaporation of the liquid produces a powerful cooling effect. This is caused by energy being soaked up to convert the liquid into a gas. The heat energy is converted into the phase change from water to water vapor, or alcohol to alcohol vapor. But the cooling benefits of water don't end there. When all that water vapor works its way into the upper atmosphere, it cools and condenses, forming clouds. And clouds shade the ground, cooling them off. Wearing a light-colored hat on a hot day does the same thing. So what does control the global average temperature of the planet? It's certainly not CO2. In fact, scientists are still trying to answer this question. One controversial but promising line of investigation involves solar wind and its effect on cosmic rays. Why cosmic rays? Because like the tracks made in a cloud or hydrogen bubble chamber from high-energy particles, cosmic rays make tracks in the sky, stimulating water vapor to become cloud nuclei. This is from the research of Henrik Svensmark and his colleagues. His work shows far higher rates of correlation with changes in global temperature than does CO2.
When we published this in 1991, it was at a time where everybody believed that the warming that had taken place during the century was mainly due to carbon dioxide increase, man-made greenhouse gases. So when this community saw this nearly perfect correlation between solar magnetic activity changes and temperature, they were very surprised. What we could see was that when the magnetic activity of the sun was larger, then the temperature on the Earth was higher.
There was a beautiful, clear-cut correlation that surprised me more than I ever dreamed of. The red curve is for the cosmic rays, you see the variation, and the blue curve, that's for the cloud cover. It means that cosmic rays are affecting the Earth's climate, and that's a fascinating thought, since it means that space is very and directly relevant for us. The magnetic field that comes out of the sun has more than doubled over the last 100 years. As a result, fewer cosmic rays have sprayed the atmosphere and fewer clouds has formed. The consequence has been a warmer Earth. When a strong magnetic field comes out of the sun, fewer cosmic rays spray the Earth. That means fewer clouds to keep us cool. But a lazy sun with a weak magnetic field lets in more cosmic rays from the stars. And in the air, they make more clouds. That's how the stars and the sun controls the Earth's cloudiness.
More work needs to be done to unravel the secrets of nature. Conclusion: CO2 is not the main driver of climate change. We've seen how the correlation of CO2 with temperature is almost non-existent on all timescales, except those shown by Al Gore in his film. We've also seen how the correlation of solar wind and cloud formation on weekly, monthly, and yearly timescales is surprisingly high, indicating that the ebb and flow of solar wind and cosmic rays may play a vital role in controlling one of climate's most important features, the albedo or reflectivity of the planet as governed by cloud cover.